Welcome back to the Birdhouse Dynasty Show, and today we're going to be talking about wide receivers and some possible buys for you. I do want to start out by saying that I don't necessarily want to call them buys because depending on your league's requirements for rosters and how many teams there are in your league, the term buy might be different in your league versus another league. What I mean by that is there's a certain threshold for wide receivers that I like to go by, and that varies by league. So let's say that your league is just a 10-man league, start 10, all right? Maybe you can only start 4, maybe 5 wide receivers, all right? So for 10 teams, if you have only 4 wide receivers you can start, that would leave you at 40 wide receivers, all right? And I tend to use the required wide receivers, which in a league like that where you can start 4, that would be 2 wide receivers plus 2 flexes. Maybe it's start 3 wide receivers plus 1 flex. Well, if it's start 3 wide receivers times 10, that would give you 30 plus 1 flex, which could be a running back or wide receiver, so I'd do a half. So in that case, it would be 35. So I'd want all my receivers that I start to be in the top 35 of the wide receivers. Now, if it's a 12-team league, start 12, well, maybe then you could start 6 or 7 wide receivers, so then the pool widens, all right? And that's important when making trades. Someone like Jaden Reed becomes an automatic start in a league where the threshold goes up to 50 or 60, whereas in a shallower league, someone like Jaden Reed would be much more on the very cusp of starting week to week for you. So that's important when you're looking at trades, especially when it comes to the wide receiver position. The wide receiver position tends to make up half of our starting lineups during the season. So that's why they're so important to own not only the top end elite receivers, but also take advantage of the value that can present itself with the middle tiers of wide receivers. Guys that are maybe aging, like a Keenan Allen or Mike Evans, as well as some of the younger guys who are in the up and up, they can be had at values. Now, conversely, you can also overpay for some of these receivers. Sometimes you might overpay for one of these receivers that is just outside of the threshold. We don't want to be doing that. We don't want to be making trades like that because typically your roster construction should try to have basically however many receivers you can start plus 1, maybe 2 if it's deeper. All right? So you don't really, in almost any league, typically you don't want to be owning any more than 5, 6 to 7 or 8 wide receivers. If you're owning more than 8 wide receivers, they better be pretty good, and it's just a matter of you haven't been able to trade them to somebody, or you're just overfilling your roster, clogging up your roster, where there could be better use made of the roster spot with a running back, whether it's a good high-end running back or just any running back on a 53-man roster. They're going to help you more than that 9th or 10th wide receiver can. All right, we don't want to be rostering the Darius Slaytons or Xavier Hutchinsons. They will not start for you any week, and if they have to start for you any week, that probably means you're not competing. All right, so let's get right into it. Today I want to start out with a couple of veteran wide receivers. First of all, Amari Cooper. Cooper is coming off a wonderful season last year. I enjoy Amari. He helped me win one of my leagues. And he had an amazing semifinal week, scored over 60 points in a lot of formats for people. Anybody who had him in the playoffs knows he definitely helped you win your league. Now, looking forward to 2024, Amari will be 30 years old when we get to the 2024 season, but that doesn't mean he's necessarily getting any worse. He's still looking at being the top dog in Cleveland, All right, yes, Njoku is there, but they both were able to thrive last season. I don't see any reason for Cleveland to be trading up into the top 10 of this draft where they would be drafting one of the elite receivers. I do think that they could possibly definitely draft a receiver in rounds 2 through 5 to help the core out. But in the end, Amari's looking at being the top dog in Cleveland again. So the first trade I've got for you includes Amari Cooper, and this is more of a case where I'm looking at what not to do. All right. So in this case, I feel like somebody overpaid for Amari. Now, we had on one side Kyler Murray and the 206 going for Amari and Will Levis, and this was in a 10-team Superflex tight end premium start 10. So there's only 100 starters in a week. We've got the threshold of wide receivers being at about 35 to 40 here. So Amari definitely fills in within that threshold. He was wide receiver 18 last year. But the problem here is that there was a little bit of an overpay. Okay, I would have liked to see the 206 actually on the other side of the trade. I mean, Kyler and the 206 for Amari and Will Levis, basically the 206 and Amari kind of equal themselves out right now. I mean, I'd say Amari could be worth maybe the 201 or 202, sure. But Kyler and Will Levis are definitely not equal value right now. I can understand wanting Will Levis more than Kyler. Maybe you've fallen out of favor with Kyler. He's grown frustrating on you, and he's disappointed a little. And you see Will Levis as having some more potential. He's more of the prototypical tight quarterback build. And I did mention in a couple videos ago how I see the Titans as a rising offense. I mean, they can't get any worse than they were last year, so it's kind of hard not to be a potentially rising offense when we're talking the Titans. But Levis does possess some good tools, and there is the potential there for a big spike from the Titans offense this upcoming season. That said, I don't think that him and Kyler are equal in value, okay? So in this case, this was one where I think you got a little oversold on Amari's value, maybe valuing it more of like a mid to late first here, and then throwing in the 206 just to get the deal done. I don't know how the conversation worked out here, but I do definitely prefer the Kyler and 206 side of this deal. Not the way I'd want to acquire Amari. Now, the next guy I want to talk about is Chris Godwin. So Chris Godwin came off another solid season last year, sort of under the radar because Mike Evans had a very good season. But Chris Godwin was able to still put together another 80-catch, 1,000-yard season. However, he only had 2 touchdowns, so that held him back a little. Finished wide receiver 30. Definitely could have finished much higher had he had like a average 6 to 7 touchdown season. So we could look for some possible positive regression there for Chris Godwin next season. Also to note, yes, they did lose Dave Canales to the Panthers to be their head coach. That was their offensive coordinator. But the Buccaneers brought in a Rams guy to be their offensive coordinator now. And so they're looking at implementing more of the offense where a slot guy is more targeted. They're saying Godwin will play the role that Cooper Kupp did. And ironically, Chris Godwin is the same age that Cooper Kupp was when he had his big blow-up season a couple years ago. So I'm not saying that Godwin is going to go for 1,800 yards and an amazing Cooper Kupp season. What I am saying, though, is it's very likely he gets some more targets this season. So in that regard, I would consider Godwin somebody who is a value that could rise next season. All right? He could score you more points. How many more? How much more value he actually gets? Who knows? But I don't really see his value falling at this point. He's still only going to be 28 years old next season. Now, in Godwin's case, I put my money where my mouth is. I went out and acquired him for the 205 in a 12-team Superflex tight end premium. I think it was pretty good value. I already had 5 other picks before the 205 in this draft. I am in the middle of a rebuild in this one, and I was looking to just solidify the wide receiver room with a good piece that I can count on, and that is Chris Godwin. Godwin's somebody who, for a contender, ideally you're looking at trying to be your wide receiver 4 or 5 on your roster. That would be something that I would feel nice and cozy with if I had Chris Godwin there on my team. So I just was happy to acquire him. And next up, we've got a couple of more risky wide receivers. Now, these are the wide receivers who I would say are just outside of the threshold, but could move up into the threshold next season. So these aren't guys I'm saying if you're a contender, I would necessarily go out and try and acquire, look at every league and try and find where they are, who owns them, this or that. I would say these two are more for some rebuilding teams, maybe teams in the middle of the pack. You know you're not one of the elite teams in your league, but these are guys who can pay off for you. 3 years ago, Deebo Samuel was down in this area. He was one of those guys nobody wanted. The guy couldn't stay healthy. And then what happened? For 1 year, he finally stayed healthy and gave you a top 5 season at the position. It was a huge hit for anybody who traded for Deebo that offseason. Anybody who had him and sat on him, you know, they were able to benefit from that. Now, a couple of guys that I see in this ballpark this year would be Jahan Dotson and Treylon Burks. All right? These two guys are gross right now. Nobody wants them on their roster. All right, Jahan Dotson's coming off a terrible second season. Now, mind you, the stats aren't that much worse than what he did in his rookie season. However, the main thing is that he actually played all 17 games, whereas in his rookie season, he only played 12 games. So his points per game definitely came down. His touchdowns came down. For some reason, him and Sam Howell just didn't click. And the good thing for him, Sam Howell probably won't be the quarterback next season. The Commanders are picking 2nd overall and likely to take either Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Jaden Daniels. I could say at this point, it's probably Drake May, but we'll see. You never know. There might be a trade. Maybe Washington moves down a pick or two. You never know. But in regards to Jahan Dotson, the main thing is that he probably has a new quarterback next season. And he is still an extreme talent. I mean, he was picked top 20 2 years ago in the draft. That talent is still there. The fact that Sam Howell couldn't find him doesn't mean that he wasn't getting open. Going into last season, Matt Harmon, and he does a reception perception for you. You can check that out. It is a pay site. But if you check that out, it does show you who gets open the most, who takes advantage of those opportunities, who has the highest yak, those types of things, it would show guys who maybe should have had more targets because they were getting open. Anyway, Jahan Dotson going into last season was a top rookie from the class in his reception perception rating. Obviously, that didn't mean anything because, well, Sam Howell couldn't find him. But again, with a new quarterback, a new offense in place, I do like the prospect for Jahan Dotson. Now, again, we have a deal that happened in one of my leagues that I wasn't overly excited about in this league. It's a 12-team Superflex. The deal was Jahan Dotson, the 112, and a 25 first, going for Puka Nacua and the 304. So, again, while I do like the potential of throwing a dart at Jahan Dotson here, I think that it was a little steep for Puka. If I'm trading away Puka, I want to get two guys that are in this threshold, right? I want to get like Chris Godwin and Amari Cooper together, all right? I don't want to be taking, like, I wouldn't do this so I'd get Jahan Dotson and Treylon Burks for Puka. That doesn't really help my starting lineup out, all right? The 112, again, that's in that range where you usually get the receivers that are in the back end of the first round from the real NFL draft. So it could be a hit, could be a miss, and the 25 first is a nice piece, obviously, to have. I don't hate the deal. By all means, the 112 and the 25 first can be used to get other assets. So I understand breaking it down in what essentially is a 3-for-1. The 304 is just a toss-in piece here. I obviously can understand the other side wanting Puka for these three pieces. And so I do see this deal as a win-win. Both sides accomplish what they were looking to attain. And we'll move on to Treylon Burks now. So Mr. Treylon Burks has had two awful seasons to start his career out. He showed definite flashes, but at the same time, he has definitely not been able to stay healthy. Very much reminding me of what Deebo Samuel was going through. Now, I don't see the Titans offense as the 49ers offense. However, as I did mention, the Titans offense is going through some changes, new head coach, offensive minded, and reality is treylon just DeAndre Hopkins there. And DeAndre Hopkins will be another year older. So Treylon Burks definitely will have the opportunity to take over there. It's just a matter of him staying healthy. And I know that the Titans are going to want to get him the ball. So, it's some of these trades I've seen Burks go in have been kind of ridiculous. I saw somebody give away Treylon for a fourth rounder in one league. Now, again, I went out and I'm putting my money where my mouth is here. I went out and acquired Treylon Burks in the 207 for Dalton Schultz and the 210 in a 12-team Superflex tight end premium league. So I moved up 3 spots in the second round, gained Treylon Burks, and got rid of Dalton Schultz. Schultz I didn't really need. He was my third or fourth tight end on that team. So again, I just was basically throwing a dart on Treylon Burks in this case. And I enjoyed moving up 3 spots in the second round. Another deal involving Treylon that I wasn't as excited about. This one was in a 12-team Superflex where the guy gave up Kirk Cousins and acquired Treylon Burks and Jonathan Mingo. Now, Jonathan Mingo also fits into this area where he had a disappointing rookie season. Panthers offense obviously struggled. And so Mingo is part of my next group. Like I put Dotson and Burks into this middle grouping. But I have one other further down tier for much, much deeper leagues. And I'll get into that in a second. But going back to this trade, you've got Kirk Cousins in a 12-team Superflex league who is still going to very much produce wherever he goes, whether he stays in Minnesota or goes somewhere else. They're going to be grabbing him so he can sling it around. Okay, I believe Cousins has at least 2 to 3 more years of production. So in this case, again, Treylon Burks and Jonathan Mingo, I would have definitely preferred at least one for sure starter at the wide receiver position if I'm going to do a cross positional trade like this. I just see Kirk Cousins as, just too valuable of an asset to toss away like this in this case. Now, the owner did have 4 quarterbacks, so I can understand it. I just think I would have waited longer, maybe till at least we find out where Kirk Cousins is going this season. If you're going to deal Kirk Cousins or if you're looking at him and wanting to potentially get rid of him, just have some patience. Wait this offseason to see where he goes. As soon as he signs somewhere, you're going to get a little bump in value because there'll be some hype. Oh, we can throw to this guy or that, or boom, he's back in Minnesota and he's got Justin Jefferson and Addison and Hawkinson there. So he'll get a little value bump there. It always creates a little bit more of excitement. So he's one of the guys that you'll want to wait till the free agency period to to trade away if you're looking to do so. Now, in the very bottom end of the barrel, there's 3 guys I had that I threw down. Jonathan Mingo is one of them, like I said before, Rashad Bateman, and Quentin Johnston. Now, all 3 of these guys are just pukes on people's rosters. Nobody wants them. They've been staring at them, and they just want them off. Well, you know what? All 3 of those guys still possess talent. Now, none of them met the rookie wide receiver requirements, which is about 650 yards receiving in your rookie season, to actually show that you're going to have a productive season as a wide receiver 1 or 2. But they still possess the talent that I see them possibly sneaking up into the threshold for a wide receiver. And if they can get some decent opportunity, you know, Bateman's on a good offense, all right? The Ravens threw the ball more this year. But I do see OBJ heading out of town. That gives Bateman an opportunity. Same with Quentin Johnston. I easily see Mike Williams being cut. The potential is there for Keenan Allen to be cut, and it's a whole new offense there in LA. So Quentin Johnston still has a chance to bounce back from his terrible rookie season, and I do think that there's that slight chance that he's worth tossing a 3rd or 4th rounder. I mean, if you have a team where you have 5 or 6 3rd or 4th rounders, it's worth throwing a dart with one of them at Quentin Johnston. All right. The last guy I want to mention is one of my favorites. That's Jakobi Meyers. Meyers is always undervalued, always finishes in the top 30. Go out and grab him if you need an extra wide receiver. He's definitely worth it. Maybe get him thrown in on the back end of a bigger deal. But I can't say that I've ever been disappointed with Jakobi Meyers. All right. So before I go, I just want to let you know to check me out on Twitter and X at clemke007_FF. And that our next show coming at you in a few days will get into some quarterback options that you might be considering, whether they're young, old, what should you do with them? Maybe get rid of them in your league. Maybe go out and buy them. We'll go over it in the next show. Thanks for having us today. I'm out.